But the whole goal of really everything that SharePoint Backup provides is twofold. I want to back up and restore my whole farm, or I want to restore content granularly. And unfortunately, we haven't got to it in the demos yet, or in the slides yet. But we have a few really cool ways to actually integrate with existing backups that they're already taking. So this has become, and I'm going to guess, this is going to become the most popular part of the product. There's a reason, obviously, why we built it. People kept asking for it for years and years and years with Selective Restore Manager. And now the functionality to use SharePoint backups and to use SQL backups that they're already taking today, which almost everybody you guys talk to, even if they have a big enterprise system-wide backup, they're going to be using SQL to take backups. If not, then they use SharePoint to take backups. But I can guarantee at least 50% of the people that you're talking to, no matter what backup enterprise solution they're using, their DBAs or somebody on their infrastructure team is taking SQL backups because they have to. Anything that's in SQL will be backed up. These guys don't really necessarily care that it's SharePoint. They're backing up every single database that happens to be on that particular server. So we're going to be talking about how we can actually recover from that as well. But first, let's start with our overall backup solution. So we have, as we now know, the ability to take really quick backups. But what do we actually protect, and why do we even exist as a product if you can take backups with SQL Server, if you can take backups with SharePoint? Well, there's a heck of a lot more into SharePoint than just content, than just documents. That's really all we've been talking about with a lot of our products. But think about Content Matrix, think about Replicator, all the different little bits and pieces that it has to replicate or that it has to migrate. All those components also need to be backed up in order for SharePoint to successfully actually function. So there's these things out there in the world, we don't have to really focus on what they are, but in the world of SharePoint that live on the web front-end server themselves. So it's things called the Hive. If anybody's heard of the SharePoint Hive, it's sort of the lifeblood of SharePoint. It's literally just a bunch of files, and it's all the pages that you see when you open up SharePoint. It's where everything lives, and you have to protect that when you are a SharePoint recovery solution like we are. You've got things like your global assembly cache. You don't have to know what these are, but these are all the other components that make SharePoint function, including the most important ones that everybody always will probably ask you about, like, do you protect our search index? We absolutely 100% protect every aspect of their search, their database, and their index. So as they do a restore, content is already searchable. You don't have to actually wait for the search index to run again as well. And the reason, again, why, and again, I hope I don't go too in the weeds with this, but one of the cool parts about the reason why people want a third-party SharePoint solution for backup is because of how we do a backup. If you know our old solution, we used to do a granular crawl. It's almost like migrating, right? They actually have to rebuild SharePoint. So we actually had to crawl using the SharePoint API an entire SharePoint farm. And for those who know our old solution, people complain about that quite often. It did not get good performance. You got about literally 5 gigs an hour. And if you can imagine backing up 5 gigs an hour for somebody who's trying to back up a terabyte, they're just not going to buy your product. So we got rid of that. It's completely gone from the product as a whole. And we can now just take simple backups from our whole farm that we were already taking and recover from those without having to actually run a second job. So our new product requires one backup job to do any kind of recovery. It could be a full farm that I'm doing here. I could bring back everything that makes my SharePoint farm work, from the databases all the way down to all the little bits and pieces on the web front-end server. Or I could use that same backup to just simply recover content. I don't have to take a separate job. I don't have to run a granular job that gets 5 gigs an hour. And guess what? This is the recommended way to take backups. Microsoft provides an API for you to use so that you do not take any resources away from end users. You do not interrupt end users. Nothing goes down during this backup at all. It's completely the best actual way to take a backup. It's called Volume Shadow Copy Services, VSS. So with the utilization of VSS, we get around 200 to, I've seen on one of my beta clients, 600 gigs an hour being backed up. So that's a hell of a lot better than 5 gigs an hour.
Why is that so much faster?
Because it takes, and I always use this word with people because the word snapshot means a heck of a lot more to a lot of people in the outside world than copy does. But it's a volume shadow copy, so it basically literally takes out takes a whole separate copy while it continues to let you use SharePoint and read from it and write to it. And so we take a volume shadow copy service itself takes a snapshot. We just actually utilize that service as a whole. So it does no crawling, it does no anything, it just takes underlying, sort of underneath the hood, it does its magic on actually taking the memory and taking the data and unhooking it from the database, making a copy of it, and giving it to us, and then we can manipulate it with our VSS writer.
VSS, when you're doing the snapshot, what is that window typically? You know, from your main SharePoint to you're putting it in memory somewhere. What is that window?
There is no window to the end users. I mean, there is a window behind the scenes, but there's to SharePoint, no interruption whatsoever. So there's no downtime with taking these backups, which is why you can continue to take these constantly throughout the day. All right, so that makes sense, hopefully. We don't have to go through diving through a full backup, because the line I always use, I stole this from one of the clients that we have. He's like, backup's easy, right? Backup is a science. You're actually doing a restore as an art. And I like that because we are utilizing with this product a framework of a product that we already own, Content Matrix. So Content Matrix has been around for 11 plus years, right? We have so much in there that we've been able to utilize to restore any of those pieces. To anything that Content Matrix can actually migrate, we can restore granularly. We can restore down to metadata, to workflow, to all the stuff that we've been asking for years and years in Content Matrix, and this product just got to utilize it, just got to basically take advantage of 11 years worth of things. So one of the quotes that I got from a guy in my beta program was using Andy's old company, Aperture. And he'll talk about, I'm sure, how the big guys like Aperture like to compete against us. We don't see us as competitors. He actually tried to use Aperture and tried to do a granular restore with their plugin. And it just didn't work. That's because they haven't been using and working with SharePoint for the last 11 years like we have. Our restores have the ability to work just like Content Matrix does, and it's taking advantage of all that functionality that it's gained over the last 11 years. So for all these big guys, these new guys that are sort of entering the market, backup's always been easy. It's been easy to them, it's easy to us. We can all take them. It's pushing a couple buttons, checking a few boxes. It's the restore, it's the SharePoint component, and that's where we're going to shine, right? So that's why we're going to encourage people to basically look at our restore section. Have you performed an actual have you performed an actual fire drill before? Have you done any restores with your existing backups yet? So let's do some with ours. I'll just go through the UI. I'm just checking on time, but I think we're pretty good. So I've got a bunch of backups that I've taken. Actually, just at 9:30 this morning while we were finishing up the StoragePoint demo, I took a backup so we can restore some of that content that I just uploaded during the StoragePoint demo. And I just took one database that I backed up, and I can go and actually look in that database, and you'll notice this looks exactly like Content Matrix. There's that Metalogix Academy site collection, looks exactly like Control Point. Everything that the client is familiar with, if they know our products, they will be able to utilize directly just within backup as well. There's not another UI to learn. Let's just go down, and this is where I was uploading all my content to. All this content was getting externalized, so if you look back at our StoragePoint demo, I was uploading backup tool matrix and I think SharePoint backup scorecard. So all that content just got backed up. Actually, we can just see in my little crummy environment. It took about, go to the backup section. Unless it froze on me, there we go. It took about 36 seconds to do a whole database to back it up. And the goal is, and you can see the other one took 122 gigs an hour, and this is my little single VM with everything on it. So it's going to evaluate really well, it's going to show really well, and when your client wants to just simply do a quick test, they've got a ton of options, and that's another goal of ours, that we provide more options than a lot of the competitors. So the test that everybody's going to do is restore a document. So let's just do that. Let's restore the one that I uploaded this morning. Backup SharePoint scorecard. You see a lot of buttons up here, but the overall concept is in place or out of place. Am I bringing it exactly back to where it was before, or am I moving it to a different location? So let's just do a quick restore here, and let me actually delete it from SharePoint first, just to show everybody. Which one am I backing up? SharePoint backup. scorecard. Let's go ahead and wipe it out. So for the typical evaluation, this is what they're going to run. They're going to want to come in and do a restore. They're not going to want to get asked a lot of questions. They're just going to want to bring it back. We run through a nice wizard that says, do you want to just upload this document? Yes, okay, all right, you're good to go. And that's the typical thing that most people are going to test. They'll do that probably at a couple of levels. It's going to be quick. It's going to be really easy because they didn't have to necessarily do that granular backup job anymore. They didn't have to run a job that took an extreme amount of time for them to actually do any kind of granular recovery. All right, so that finished. Let's give it a quick refresh. And it's back. SharePoint backup, whatever one I just did, I think it was backup tool requirements. And you'll notice everything comes back along with it. Metadata, the modified date. This one didn't have any custom metadata along with it, but all the custom metadata will come along back with the document. And if they own StoragePoint, which we now know is the key integrator here, for those who know this sort of section of the UI, this is telling me that it's actually already cached on the file system. It's already set up and ready to go to get externalized. They had to do literally nothing from the restore perspective to integrate with StoragePoint. So does that make sense, especially for the folks who were selling our previous backup product, who saw the slow granular job? We've got one job to do any type of restore. It's a full farm restore or it's a granular restore of content. I'll take silence again as a yes. That makes perfect sense, Stephen. Thank you for the great update to backup.
One more question. So in this version, are we restoring it to another farm, another target farm in this version?
That's a great use case, right? And
Yeah.
one of the things we focused on is the ability to let people do that, because we want people to perform fire drills, as we call them. We want you to test out restoring to a whole nother farm, to a dev farm, to make sure it works. Because you don't want to necessarily do this to production. You don't want to delete something and see if it works. You want to restore it to a farm that's a non-prod environment. So absolutely, we can go across farms. We can go and restore this to any location. And actually, another one of our advantages is that we give people a ton of options when you do a restore. So just for example, let's say I wanted to restore a site collection and I wanted to make some changes. So restoring it to another farm means I'm restoring it out of place. You'll notice that there's a lot of features just like Content Matrix, but specifically for the restore. I can actually just select where it's going to go. Your farms would show up there if there are multiple farms. But we'll bring things back if they want to, as it was in the backup, or they could do some changes to it. They could change the URL. They could bring permissions with it or not. So a big advantage that we're providing is that they don't have to restore anything exactly like it was. They can actually make a change to it as they do a restore if need be. And that's, again, just taking advantage of the Content Matrix framework. And if they need to do a simple one, another just simple test when people are looking at things is obviously a search, right? You don't want to have to navigate something. If I'm spelling StoragePoint right, yeah. You don't want to have to navigate a large tree, especially clients will have a ton of content in these environments. You want to be able to do a quick search. So, all right, now I just found every single document that contained the word StoragePoint in the last few backups that I have. So a really easy UI to understand, a really easy UI to get through. And the same thing actually occurs on the self-service recovery side. So I talked about the self-service part of our product already. All they have to do is let's say they're on a lovely SharePoint site again. I'm an end user, and I actually just want to get something back that I know is in a backup. Let's let SharePoint wake up. Go to that menu item, and you can see actually a lot of our products have this, right? We have these menus here for control point, for storage point. Well, we also have one for self-service recovery, where as an end user, I'm the head of marketing, and I've been given permissions to actually restore content. I can go directly here and search through all of the backups that my team has taken. I don't have to ask them to do anything. I can go and say, give me backups for the last 30 days, for all the days that we've taken backups. I'll just do today, so it's a little bit quicker, and we're not looking through millions and millions of items. But this is a really simple UI for anybody who just needs to find a document to recover, to find something that they need without bothering the SharePoint guy that they need something back. And they could actually do a couple of things. They could browse a hierarchy of all the backups that they have, or they could search for the document just like I did, search by name in the actual interface. So same kind of concept, given directly to the end users. storage point. There we go.
Can you bring back something that you might have overwritten accidentally? Not so something that wasn't maybe captured in the last backup, but you just need a version that you had like 20 minutes ago or earlier that day. Is that possible?
You can only recover things that you've taken backups of, but SharePoint has a concept of versioning. That's just a feature of SharePoint. So if you, let's say, overwrote, like you created version 5, but you want to go back to version 3, you can do that out of the box. You can just go click on version 3.
One of the advantages of moving to something that's a very quick backup, let's say that previously you were taking 3 backups a day, one every 8 hours. Now you have the opportunity to take backups every 15 minutes. So the likelihood of being able to find what you're looking for, even off of the backups, assuming maybe your company for some reason didn't turn on versioning, is much greater. So there's a lot of advantages to shrinking those backup windows, and you get a lot of cases like this where, yeah, you can go find stuff as well. So it's pretty helpful.
Can you bring up that screen again, the one where you do the restore? You know, the buckets you showed, the different parts of SharePoint. Not the restore, sorry, the backup part. So those components, can you restore a particular, not the documents, not the content database, but any of those other components to another farm? You can pick, let's say, if I say, where do the solutions sit, for example, in the Hive or?
In the GAC, the Global Assembly Cache.
Okay, so let's see if I pick that and I restore that, that would work, just selectively? I can.
It would. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that you need to do to deploy those solutions, but you would have those on another farm. Yeah, so all of these, and actually it's the preferred way to do these type of restores is to do an out-of-place restore to another location and grab just what you need. Because realistically, your registry didn't get screwed up as a whole, just one registry item did, and you just need that one item back. So the goal is that you really don't actually want to overwrite any of these components besides databases, ever, really. It's just a bad idea. So it's a best practice, and that kind of stuff is actually outlined. We give little step-by-step guides, plus sort of the same way Diagnostic Manager does links to how to do a lot of these restores through best practices. But let's get to my favorite part of the product, and I think something that's going to be able to help sell the product a lot more than just a regular backup product would, just the SharePoint backups. Again, a lot of your clients that or your prospects you're going to be talking to are going to have SharePoint backups, are going to have SQL backups. Their DBAs are going to be taking them and just plopping it on their desk and giving them access to it and saying, here's your backups as maybe a second alternative to the enterprise backups that they're already taking. So what do they do with these backups? Well, they can't actually do anything at the granular level with them. They can't do any kind of granular restores of those backups. They're little files, little BAK files that you can't read into without getting a product like ours. And so one goal here is to say that you can continue to do that. Let your DBA take his backups. He's not going to stop. He's not going to want to stop because it's his ass on the line if something goes wrong, and he needs to have those backups too. But for the SharePoint guy who's getting these backups, and this actually existed, I think we're going to do a use case on the slide here in a little bit, but I would say 80% of the people in my beta program wanted this functionality only. And when they saw the rest of the product, when they saw the full farm backup, they said, okay, that's great. Now I can actually do a full farm backup as well. Let me just get my feet wet a little bit here, and let me start taking the full farm backups. We actually have functionality where we built in the product to not interrupt the SQL backups that people are taking, so they can continue to do both. Take SQL backups, take backups with our product, and then use us to do restores at the granular level. Because again, the majority of restores is not going to be a database got corrupted. That happens once in a blue moon. The majority of restores is content, is a site, a list, a folder, an item. So here, we've got literally just an import wizard. To put it simply, you've got backups taken in SQL in a few different ways, and you've got SharePoint full farm backups. So if I go and let me show you what it looks like out of the box. This is how painful taking a backup is in SharePoint. I've got granular backup section here in central admin. It sounds great. I've got ability to take some granular backups. They give me 2 links: perform a site collection backup, export a site or a list. This is perform a site collection singular, 1 site collection at a time. And then this is export. Basically create a whole different type of file, do an export of a list, which really isn't a backup at all. What you'll notice is there's no recovery of any of these. So all of a sudden I'm taking full farm backups, I'm taking site collection backups one at a time, I'm exporting subsites and lists as well that are inside of those site collections. That's 3 different jobs, and then I can't recover anything from them. I can't recover any content. There's no granular recovery of content. So that's really where we fit in. That's where we come in and we say, all right, now that you've taken that, I'm going to be able to restore from it. I'm going to run you through a wizard, and I'm going to show you the exact UI that I just showed you and give you a tree of all that data, let you search through that data, and recover that content.